The wife who discovered feminism. I was staring at a bill for $847 that my wife had just handed me, payment for emotional labor services, when I realized she'd completely lost touch with reality. What started as her reading feminist blogs about unpaid domestic work had escalated into her literally trying to charge me for being married to her. But what she didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything for weeks, and I was about to present her with an invoice that would make her $847 look like pocket change. This whole nightmare began 6 months ago when my wife discovered what she called feminist enlightenment. Suddenly, every conversation became a lecture about patriarchy. Every household task became evidence of my oppression. Every normal marriage interaction became a case study in gender inequality. The turning point came when she attended something called a women's empowerment workshop downtown. She came home with a new vocabulary, a stack of books, and an attitude that made me feel like a stranger in my own house. "I've been doing some calculations," she announced over dinner that night, pulling out a notebook filled with charts and numbers. "According to my research, I provide approximately 43 hours of unpaid domestic labor per week. At minimum wage, you owe me $2,947 monthly. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one." I set down my fork and looked at this woman I'd been married to for 9 years. The woman whose student loans I'd paid off. The woman whose car I'd bought. The woman whose dream of starting an online boutique I'd funded with $15,000 of my savings. "You want me to pay you for being my wife? I want you to acknowledge that marriage has been a system of free labor extraction from women for centuries, and I'm not participating in it anymore." She slid the notebook across the table. "I've itemized everything. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, grocery shopping, appointment scheduling, gift purchasing for your family, emotional support, relationship maintenance. It all adds up." I flipped through her calculations. She'd assigned monetary values to everything, including listening to your work problems at 25 per hour and managing household inventory at 20 per hour. This is insane. This is fairness. I've been subsidizing your lifestyle with free labor while you get paid for your contributions outside the home. That ends now. The confidence in her voice told me this wasn't just a phase. This was a full transformation. She'd been completely radicalized by whatever she'd been reading online. But instead of arguing or getting angry, I made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," I said calmly, "if we're turning this marriage into a business transaction, then let's do it properly. I'll pay you for your services, but you're also going to pay me for mine." Her confident expression faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if we're itemizing contributions and assigning monetary values, then everything gets included. Your services, my services, and the lifestyle I provide that makes your domestic work possible in the first place." I stood up from the table. "Give me until tomorrow morning. If we're playing business now, then you're about to learn how business really works." That night, while she was at another one of her feminist book clubs, I sat down with our financial records, a calculator, and the kind of cold analytical thinking that had made me successful in my career. If she wanted to play games with our marriage, I was going to show her exactly what game she'd started. The next morning, I woke up early and prepared what I now call the reality invoice. 4 pages of itemized charges that would make any corporate accountant proud. When she came downstairs for breakfast, I handed her the documents along with her coffee. "Your counter invoice," I said casually. She looked at the papers like they might explode. "What is this?" "Since you want to be paid for your domestic contributions, I figured you'd also want to pay for the lifestyle that makes those contributions possible." She started reading, and I watched her face change with every line item. "Housing provision, $2,400 monthly for your share of mortgage, property taxes, and insurance for the 4-bedroom house you live in rent-free." Her mouth dropped open. "You can't charge me rent in my own house." "It's not your house, it's my house that I allow you to live in. If we're running a business now, nothing is free." She kept reading, her voice getting shakier with each item. "Utilities and services, $380 monthly for electricity, gas, water, internet, cable, streaming services, and phone plan. Vehicle provision, $445 monthly for insurance, maintenance, and depreciation on the SUV you drive daily. Healthcare coverage, $520 monthly for the premium health insurance plan I provide through my employer. This is ridiculous. Keep reading. Food and dining, $650 monthly for groceries, restaurants, and entertainment. Clothing and personal care allowance, $300 monthly for your shopping habits. Investment and retirement contributions, $800 monthly that I put away for our future financial security. I watched her doing the math in her head, watched the color drain from her face as she realized where this was going. That's over $5,500, she whispered, $5,495 to be exact. And that's just the basic lifestyle provision. We haven't even gotten to the premium services yet. I pulled out a second sheet of paper. Personal chef services. When I cook dinner, that's a $40 value per meal. Financial planning and investment management. I handle all our money, investments, and financial planning. That's typically a $200 monthly service fee. Home maintenance and repair services. I fix everything around here myself instead of hiring contractors. That saves us about $400 monthly. Tech support and IT services. I handle all our computers, phones, streaming setups, and technical issues. That's easily $150 monthly in saved service fees. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Personal driver services. I drive you places when your car's in the shop, pick you up from events when you've been drinking, handle all car maintenance. That's worth about $200 monthly. Emotional labor and relationship management. You mentioned charging me $25 per hour for listening to my work problems. Well, I provide the same service. Actually, I provide more because I also handle all communication with both our families. Remember important dates, buy gifts, and manage our social calendar. I leaned back in my chair. According to your pricing structure, you owe me approximately $7,200 monthly for services rendered, minus the $2,247 you think you deserve. You're still in debt to me for $4,853 every month. She stared at the numbers like they were written in a foreign language. And that's assuming you actually provide 43 hours of domestic work per week, which I've been tracking, and you don't. I pulled out a third document, a detailed log I'd been keeping for the past month. Week 1, you did laundry twice, cooked dinner 4 times, and cleaned the bathrooms once. Total time, approximately 14 hours. Week 2, you cooked dinner 3 times, did dishes twice, and vacuumed the living room. Total time, 11 hours. Her face was completely pale now. Your actual average is 16 hours per week, not 43. So your real invoice should be $1,720 monthly, not $2,147, which means you owe me $6,080 every month just to break even. She set the papers down with shaking hands. This isn't how marriage works. Exactly. This isn't how marriage works. But you decided to change the rules. You decided that love, partnership, and mutual support could be broken down into hourly wages and service fees. I stood up and poured myself another cup of coffee. So congratulations. You've successfully turned our marriage into a business transaction. And as it turns out, you're a very expensive employee who doesn't provide nearly as much value as she thinks she does. Stop it, she whispered. Stop what? Stop playing the game you started? Stop treating our relationship like a business deal? Stop showing you the logical conclusion of your own argument? She started crying, but these weren't the manipulative tears she'd used before. These were the tears of someone who'd just realized she'd made a catastrophic mistake. I don't want to pay you $6,000 a month, and I don't want to pay you $120 a month for doing what wives have done voluntarily for centuries because they understood they were part of a partnership. I sat back down across from her. So what do you want to do? Do you want to keep playing business, or do you want to go back to being married? She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I want to go back to being married. Then you need to understand something. Marriage isn't unpaid labor. Marriage is the best paid job in the world when both people understand what they're contributing. But I wasn't done. She'd put me through months of lectures about patriarchy and oppression. She'd made me feel like a villain in my own home. She'd tried to charge me for the privilege of being married to her. There were going to be consequences. If you want to go back to being my wife instead of my employee, Then we need to establish some new ground rules. She nodded eagerly, clearly desperate to get out of the financial hole she dug herself into. First, no more feminist workshops, blogs, or book clubs. You've proven you can't consume that content without it poisoning your attitude toward our marriage. But no buts. You want to be married to me? Then you stop letting strangers on the internet tell you how to feel about your husband. She nodded reluctantly. Second, you're going to write letters of apology to both our families explaining that your recent behavior was due to outside influence and that you regret trying to turn our marriage into a business transaction. Her eyes widened. They don't know about... They know. Your sister called me last week asking if we were getting divorced because you'd been posting about unpaid domestic labor on social media. My mother asked me if you were having some kind of breakdown. The embarrassment on her face was evident. Third, you're going to start showing appreciation for what I provide instead of taking it for granted. I want to hear thank you when I pay the mortgage. I want acknowledgement when I fix something around the house. I want recognition when I handle financial planning or family obligations. Okay. Fourth, if you ever again try to charge me for being married to you, or if you start talking about our relationship in terms of unpaid labor, I'll file for divorce immediately. No discussion, no counseling, no second chances. This marriage will become the business transaction you seem to think it already is. She flinched at that. And finally, you're going to get a part-time job. Not because we need the money, but because you need perspective on what the real world looks like for women who don't have husbands providing them with middle-class lifestyles. I don't want to work. I don't care what you want. You spent months complaining about being my unpaid employee. Now you're going to learn what being someone else's actual employee feels like. The transformation didn't happen overnight. For the first few weeks, she sulked around the house like a teenager who'd been grounded. But slowly, reality started to sink in. The part-time job was the real eye-opener. She got hired at a local retail store for $12 an hour, working 20 hours a week. After taxes, her monthly income was about $800. I can't believe this is what I'd be making if I was single, she told me after her first paycheck. This wouldn't even cover groceries. Welcome to the real world. This is what financial independence looks like for most women. She started doing math on her own, calculating what her life would cost if she wasn't married to me. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment, $200, utilities, $150, food, $400, car payment and insurance, $350, health insurance, $300. I'd be broke, she realized. I'd be working full-time just to survive, and I'd have no money left over for anything fun. But you'd be free from the oppression of domestic labor. She cringed at that. I was so stupid, I had no idea how good I had it here. The feminist friends started falling away naturally. When you're working retail 20 hours a week and coming home to do your own household chores, you don't have much time or energy for workshops about gender inequality. More importantly, when you're actually earning $12 an hour, the idea of your domestic work being worth $25 an hour seems absurd. Those women at the workshops, she told me one evening, most of them aren't even married. They're angry divorcees and single women who resent their friends' happy marriages. And you let them convince you to hate your own husband. I know, I'm sorry. But the real breakthrough came when she started handling our finances for a month as part of her rehabilitation process. I wanted her to see exactly what it took to maintain the lifestyle she'd been taking for granted. She spent hours paying bills, managing investments, coordinating insurance, and dealing with all the administrative work that goes into running a household. By the end of the month, she was exhausted. I had no idea how much work you do behind the scenes, she admitted. I thought money just appeared and bills just got paid automatically. That's because I've been handling all of it so you could focus on things you actually enjoyed. Eden, I repaid you by trying to charge you for washing dishes. 6 months later, she quit the retail job. Not because I told her to, but because she'd learned what she needed to learn about the real world. I want to be a wife again, she told me. A real wife, not an employee. I want to contribute to our partnership because I love you, not because you're paying me. And if you start feeling unappreciated again, then I'll talk to you about it instead of listening to bitter strangers on the internet. Today, our marriage is better than it's ever been. Not because she's submissive or because I'm controlling, but because she finally understands the value of what we've built together. She still does domestic work, but she does it with appreciation for the fact that she gets to maintain a beautiful home instead of a cramped apartment. She still cooks meals, but she's grateful she can afford quality ingredients instead of surviving on ramen noodles. Most importantly, she understands that marriage isn't a business transaction where every contribution gets itemized and billed. It's a partnership where both people contribute what they can, when they can, however they can. The woman who once tried to charge me $2,147 for being my wife now thanks me regularly for providing the financial stability that makes her domestic contributions possible. And I thank her for creating a home environment that makes my work stress bearable. She deleted all her social media accounts and refuses to engage with feminist content online. I don't need other people's anger poisoning my happiness, she says. But the most telling change is how she talks about our marriage to other people. Instead of complaining about unpaid labor, she brags about how well her husband provides for her. Instead of joining conversations where women trash their husbands, she defends the institution of marriage. I almost destroyed the best thing in my life, she told her sister recently, because I let bitter women convince me that being taken care of was actually oppression. Her sister, who's been divorced twice and works 60 hours a week just to pay rent, replied, "I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. You're lucky he didn't just divorce you when you started that nonsense." She is lucky, and now she knows it. The moral of this story isn't that women should be grateful for unpaid domestic work. The moral is that marriage is already the highest paid job in the world when both people understand what they're contributing to the partnership. My wife learned that her domestic contributions were valuable, but so was the lifestyle that made those contributions possible. She learned that financial security, healthcare, housing, and leisure time aren't free. Someone has to work to provide them. Most importantly, she learned that when you start treating love like a business transaction, you lose both the love and the transaction. The invoice I presented her with wasn't meant to humiliate her. It was meant to educate her, and it worked. She went from being a radicalized feminist who saw oppression in every household chore to being a grateful wife who understands the true value of partnership. And I went from being treated like an oppressor in my own home to being appreciated as the provider and protector I'd always been. Sometimes the best way to win an argument isn't to argue. Sometimes it's to give the other person exactly what they're asking for and let them discover why they shouldn't have asked for it in the first place. My wife wanted to be paid for domestic work, so I showed her what it would actually cost to live the life she was living. She wanted to turn marriage into a business, so I showed her what those business terms would actually look like. She wanted equality, so I gave her equality complete with equal financial responsibility for the lifestyle she'd been enjoying for free. The result? She realized she didn't want equality. She wanted partnership. And now she has it. But she had to lose her sense of entitlement first. She had to understand what she stood to lose before she could appreciate what she had. The woman who once calculated that I owed her $2,147 monthly now understands that the real payment for being my wife was never about money. It was about security, stability, love, and a life that most single women can only dream of. And the man who was once accused of benefiting from unpaid domestic labor now gets daily appreciation for providing the foundation that makes domestic life possible. We both learned valuable lessons from her feminist phase. She learned not to let bitter strangers poison her happiness. I learned not to take appreciation for granted and to be more vocal about recognizing her contributions. But the most important lesson was this. When someone tries to convince you that your marriage is oppression, look at what your life would actually be like without it. When someone tells you that you're being taken advantage of, calculate what you'd really be paying for your current lifestyle on the open market. My wife did that calculation and realized she'd been living like a millionaire while complaining about being oppressed. Now she lives like a grateful partner who understands the true value of what she has, and that makes all the difference in the world. The feminist blogs taught her to see problems where none existed. Reality taught her to see blessings where she'd been blind to them. Guess which teacher was more effective? Thanks for sticking with this story to the end. If you're dealing with someone who's been radicalized by online content that's poisoning their attitude toward your relationship, remember this. Sometimes the best response isn't to argue with their logic. Sometimes it's to show them the logical conclusion of their own argument. Hit that follow button if you want more stories about relationships that were saved by facing reality instead of feeding delusions. Next week, I'm sharing the story of a man whose wife decided she needed to find herself and demanded an open marriage, and how he helped her find exactly what she was looking for. See you in the comments, and remember, when someone tells you your love isn't valuable, show them what life looks like without it.